question is, please introduce yourself and your upcoming book, as many or few words as you would like.
I'm Dr. Susan Cole, Professor of English and Director of the Concentration in Creative Writing at Alberta's Magnus College. And the title of my book is They Made a List, a memoir beyond memory. And it's a personal story, but at the same time, it's an exploration of our earliest acquisition of language, which is both magical and mysterious. So how did we get to language? How does our earliest use of words define and shape who we have been and who we eventually become? There is a physicist who has said, the two greatest mysteries in all of nature are the mind and the universe. You may have to travel 24 million miles to the first star outside our solar system to find an object as complex as what is sitting on your shoulders. So in a sense, my book is a mystery story about a process we're all engaged in. It's a personal quest of linguistic origins, a journey, I think, that becomes everybody's. And I just wanted to emphasize that despite recent and continuing research, exactly how the use of language arises in our infant life remains mysterious. I guess the other thing I'd like to say is that I discovered accidentally my parents' list of the first 200 words I ever spoke. And as I look at that and explore it, I'm looking at the gift of parents noticing how their baby learns and how we achieve selfhood through the use of language.
It's very beautiful. Now, this is a very personal topic to you. This is not your first book, however, that details your personal life. I believe you have another book called Missing Alice that touches on your adolescence and your parents as well. What was it like writing about yourself and your life before you remember it? And is it hard to write about such an inherently vulnerable subject?
It is hard. I mean, I'm sort of partly writing about a speechless infant.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also at some point trying to write about the fetus,
Mm-hmm.
what it was like to be in the womb. And I think, that's a wonderful question. It didn't occur to me that it was hard because I've written a number of books, and every book I write comes out of passion. Mm-hmm. And so because this was a passionate subject for me, once I found this list of 200 words, it didn't occur to me that it was making me vulnerable or nervous. I just felt so curious mm-hmm. about this 200 word list. And I should add, you just mentioned my earlier experimental memoir, Missing Alice, the name of my mother, Search of a Mother's Voice. After my father died for 8 years, I called my mother every night, the same hour. And then after she died, her voice was missing. I didn't think I could bear it. And I began to write letters, put them in my computer. My computer failed. I took it to the computer shop. The man there opened it, and there were her letters, looked at by someone else who were in the public domain. And so that became Missing Alice in Search of a Mother's Voice. Mm-hmm. But what happened here, but it was all about my mother. What happened here was that, again, I thought I was going to write about my mother. I thought, of course, my mother would have made this list of 200 words. And then a dear friend looked at the handwritten list, which is going to be printed in the book, which is printed in the book, and she saw 2 hands. And so in some sense, this book is partly honoring my father. My father is always there. And in this list, my parents' comments are intermingled. So it's a record of parental acts of noticing, and the importance of that, the importance of our parents noticing how we come to language.
Mm-hmm. Do you recommend this process, after sort of reading things over and reading about language acquisition, whatnot, so forth? Do you recommend this to be a process you do for other parents? Would you recommend to do this list of 200 words for other parents? Or is this something you would want to wean off of? Or what are your thoughts on that?
Okay, and that's a wonderful question. First of all, I just wanted to say, and this, I guess this isn't very modest of me, but 200 words at the age of 18 months is rather extraordinary. So put that in. But I would recommend that parents do keep lists. This began as a search for my first word. And because my mother was very organized and she put all my words under the letter A in a vertical column and did that whole alphabet, I don't know what my word was. And lots of kids say, oh, I know what my first word was, because that's what their parents say. But in fact, the first word could have been addressed to a teddy bear or to themselves, to a rocking chair. To really know about your own early language, I think your parents have to record it. So yeah, I would recommend that any parent who has the time, and both of my parents had full-time jobs, somehow able to make this list, I would recommend to any parent that they like to record their baby's earliest language. It will mean as much to their children as what my parents did meant to me.
Right. So this list of 200 words, obviously very extraordinary for an 18-month-old. Now that you sort of have a couple of years into your life, do you see any words in that list that sort of represent you as a person, or like you look at that and you're like, oh, of course I said that, anything like that?
Well, just to be silly, 3-syllable words are very hard for a baby, and I only have one, which is banana. Only late.
Did you like bananas? Did you like bananas? Do you still like bananas?
I don't think I did, but now as an adult, I have banana every morning. With the word that isn't there is love. I saw it, but it's not there, and that's what extraordinary to me, that word is not there.
Right. You felt it as a kid, and you felt your parents' love, but you never actually verbalized it.
Apparently I was not able to say that word. We have to wait until our vocal equipment is ready to make certain sounds. And that may have been a difficult sound for me to make. Also, linguists have pointed out that sometimes babies just have preferences, and maybe the word wasn't as interesting to me as tummy, which apparently I love.
It's very obviously I can't show it on screen or in an audio format, but it is a very interesting list of words. I can't remember all of them, but I think the most fun I would have as a kid is just saying the word apple, which is one of the first words on that list.
Oh, I'm so glad you said that. Yes, I love apples. Yes, and I used to watch my grandfather come down from New York to our Northern Virginia. He would cut his apples with a knife, and he would do it all one long strip, and it fascinated me, and the taste fascinated me, and applesauce fascinated me. And I'm so glad you love the word apple. Apparently do too.
It's just the sound it makes, just apple. It's a very sort of front of the mouth kind of word.
Oh, that's wonderful. I wonder if it could have been my first word.
It's possible. First one, A.
Possible, yes.
On the sort of similar side, but on the opposite side of that, are there any words that surprised you that were on the list?
Can you wait for a minute while I just get the list?
Of course.
I'm not sure that any actually surprised me, but yes, there was the word Otto, O-T-T-O. Not any person that I can remember. I am not sure that I was saying Otto. Don't have a relative named Otto, no friend named Otto. I don't even think there was a children's book with the word Otto in it.
Interesting.
Yes, so that surprised me. It shouldn't have surprised me, but the word, I didn't realize that at 18 months I could say my own name. I mean, clearly say my own name. My brother said for a while, but I could pronounce it. So that surprised me a bit. I guess toothbrush. I guess I could say toothbrush.
That's pretty good. That's a very good word for an 18-month-old to say. It's very distinct. Now, this is obviously a book very focused on linguistics, besides the memoir and language as a whole. How was the research process for this book like? And was it any more challenging or less challenging, maybe writing for some of your other books, sort of adding everything on?
Well, I should say that every book I've written has required research into what I didn't know.
Right.
Book required more. So I'm looking at linguistics, quantum physics, ethology, primatology.
Right.
I think, right. Psychology, anthropology. So on the one hand, it required more research than any other book I've written.
Mhm.
But at the same time, it was fascinating. It was just all of that research was fascinating.
Mhm.
Not that I was learning new fields, but I mean, the kinds of, for example, let me just see one thing, for example, I can give you quickly something that I didn't know about birds. My mother was a bird. She kept a life list. She knew everything that she had to know about birds. But one of the things that I found out is that science increasingly views human speech and bird song as products of convergent evolution, given that songbirds and humans share at least 50 genes specifically related to vocal learning. Now that was fascinating for me to learn, and it's the kind of thing that that my research, for example, in this case, into science, produced. So I would say I'm not sure I'm answering your question, but what I'm saying is that the research was in itself so interesting that I noticed that I was doing a lot of it.
Right. It was sort of like reading and writing a sort of, it became its own beast, basically.
Oh, that's nice. Yes, reading, and that's so nice what you said. So eloquent. Reading and writing were interwoven.
That's beautiful. Speaking of writing, this book, as far as I have seen from the manuscript, was written in a sort of and structured in a sort of anthology format. You had the title, and then you had the paragraph, and then you'd flip to the next page, and it'd be a new sort of memoir, a new memory, so to speak. Is there a reason why you chose to write in this format, or is that just what you're comfortable with, or well, tell me about that.
Okay, thank you. The book is really a series of mini chapters, meditations, and that's the way it happened. I would have a meditation or sort of a burst of light, and then it would be over. It would be written, and then maybe 2 days later there would be another burst, and I would write it, and it would be over. So because that's the way the bursts of light came to me, that's the way the meditations came to me, that's the way I presented it in the book.
Mhm.
It's a series of meditations or reflections on a process that I think is universal, which is trying to understand how language first comes to us. Also how language may come to animals as well. But I think the other way I could talk about it is that these different mini chapters are different lenses for looking at the same subject.
It's like
So
a kaleidoscope.
yes, exactly. Right. So they had to be separate. They had to.
I think it's a wonderful way. I think it really sort of is reminiscent of what looking back on your childhood feels like. Just these sort of little moments that you remember very vividly, but you have no context for almost.
I would like to approve what you just said and have that be part of what you're going. I love that. I love that. I hadn't thought about that, but it is like what happens to us in childhood. That's great.
It's beautiful. Well, that's all my questions. Was there anything that you want to say or touch upon before any closing remarks?
Well, I would like to say I think those are wonderful, wonderful questions. And I just had written down something that I would like to be part of the transcript. That the job of a baby is to learn about a new world, a new place outside the womb. I think my new book, they made a list, a memoir beyond memory, because I of course cannot remember what it was like to be 18 months old. I think my new book would appeal to anyone interested in the relation of parents and children, the problematic nature of human communication, the development of voice and selfhood. And I think it would be of interest to anyone who has helped or watched a child find a way to language, or as a child been helped toward language, that is through any of us.
Beautiful. And that will be a closing remark. That was very beautiful.